Hello, English learners. Welcome. If you're listening to this right now, chances are you've been trying to improve your English speaking skills, but something keeps holding you back. Maybe you understand English just fine when you read it or hear it. But when it's your turn to speak, your mind goes blank. You freeze up. You struggle to find the right words. And suddenly, all that confidence you had while studying just disappears.
And trust me, if that sounds like you, you're not alone. This happens to millions of English learners worldwide. You know the grammar, you know the vocabulary. But when you need to have a real conversation, it feels impossible. And the worst part? The longer you stay silent, the harder it gets. Some learners stay stuck for months, even years, just waiting for the perfect moment to start speaking.
But here's the truth. Waiting doesn't make you fluent. Speaking does. And what if I told you that by the end of this episode, you could start speaking English with more confidence than ever before? Not next year. Not next month. Today. Right now. Because fluency isn't about knowing every word or perfecting every sentence. It's about taking action. And that's exactly what we're going to help you do.
So, whether you're a complete beginner who's afraid to say even a single sentence, or an advanced learner who still hesitates before speaking, stay with us. We're about to give you the fastest, most practical ways to break through that silence and start speaking English naturally and fearlessly.
So, get comfortable, grab a notebook if you like, because this is the moment you stop holding back and start unlocking your fluency. Let's dive in.
Before we dive into the strategies that will get you speaking confidently, let's take a moment to understand why so many English learners stay silent. Because if we don't identify the real problem, we can't fix it. Right now, you might think, I just need to learn more words, or I need to perfect my grammar first. But let me tell you, fluency is not just about knowing more. It's about using what you already know. And yet, millions of learners hesitate. They hold themselves back. Why? Well, there are a few big reasons. And once you understand them, you can break free from them. Let's start with the first and most common one.
Fear of making mistakes. This is a huge one. Learners worry that if they say the wrong word, mispronounce something, or mess up the grammar, people will laugh at them or judge them. And that fear can be so strong that they'd rather say nothing at all than risk making an error. But here's something I want you to think about. How do babies learn to speak? Do they wait until they can form a perfect sentence before saying their first word? No. They try. They make mistakes. They get corrected. And they keep going. They don't feel embarrassed. They don't overthink. And guess what? They learn faster because of it.
Exactly. But here's where the problem starts. When we grow up, we develop something that babies don't have: self-doubt. We start worrying about what others think. We become afraid of sounding silly. And that fear is what stops us from speaking. But here's the truth. Mistakes are not a sign of failure. Mistakes are proof that you're learning. Every time you make a mistake, your brain gets feedback. It corrects itself. And that's how you improve. The real mistake? Staying silent and missing the chance to practice.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the second reason: lack of confidence. A lot of learners listen to native speakers and think, I'll never sound like that, or my accent is too strong, or I don't speak fast enough. And they convince themselves that their English isn't good enough to start speaking.
But here's something powerful to remember. You don't need to sound like a native speaker to be fluent. Fluency is not about having a perfect accent or knowing every word. It's about being able to communicate your ideas clearly. And let me tell you something else. You're always better than you think. I guarantee that if you started speaking, people would understand you way more than you give yourself credit for. And the only way to build confidence? Start speaking, even when you feel nervous.
Couldn't agree more. Now, let's talk about another major roadblock: overthinking and translating. Many learners make the mistake of trying to translate every single word from their native language into English before they speak. And what happens? The conversation moves on. They get stuck, and they say nothing.
Exactly. And that's because languages don't translate word for word. Every language has different sentence structures, different ways of expressing ideas. So if you're trying to convert your thoughts from your native language into English, your brain is doing double the work. It's translating and trying to form a sentence. No wonder it feels stressful. Instead, you need to start thinking in English. And don't worry, we're going to show you exactly how to do that later in this episode.
And finally, we have one more big challenge: not having people to practice with. Maybe you don't live in an English-speaking country. Maybe you don't have English-speaking friends. And because of that, you never get the chance to actually use the language.
But here's the good news. You don't need a speaking partner to start speaking. There are so many creative ways to practice speaking on your own, and we're going to share some game-changing techniques later in this episode. So if you've ever thought, I have no one to talk to, so I can't practice, trust me, that's not an excuse anymore.
So let's quickly recap. The 4 biggest reasons English learners stay silent are: 1. Fear of making mistakes. You're afraid of sounding wrong, so you don't speak. 2. Lack of confidence. You compare yourself to native speakers and feel not good enough. 3. Overthinking and translating. You try to translate every word, which slows you down. 4. No speaking opportunities. You don't have people to practice with, so you never start. But here's the best part. Every single one of these problems has a solution. And we're going to break them down step by step.
Exactly. Because fluency isn't some magic ability that only certain people have. It's a skill. And just like any skill, you can train it. So stick around, because up next, we're going to talk about the biggest mindset shift that will unlock your ability to start speaking English with confidence. Right now. All right. I want you to stop for a moment and ask yourself this question. What's really stopping you from speaking English right now? Think about it. You know words. You understand sentences when you hear them. You've studied grammar rules. So why aren't you speaking? What's holding you back? Maybe you're thinking, I don't feel ready yet. I need more time to learn before I start speaking. But here's the truth. That mindset is what's keeping you stuck. And today, we're going to flip that mindset completely, because once you change how you think about learning English, your confidence will change too.
Yes. If you're waiting for the day when you feel ready, I have some news for you. That day will never come. Why? Because learning a language isn't like studying for a math test. There's no final moment where you've learned everything and suddenly become fluent. Fluency doesn't come from memorizing grammar rules or studying for years. It comes from using the language. And the biggest shift you need to make is this: you don't need to be perfect to start speaking. Speaking is part of learning.
Let me ask you this. How did you learn your first language? Think back to when you were a child. Did you sit in a classroom with a grammar book? Did you wait until you had a full vocabulary before you spoke your first word? No. You listened, you imitated, and you made hundreds of mistakes. And guess what? That's exactly how you became fluent. Mistakes weren't failures. They were proof that you were learning. But as adults, we forget this. We start believing that if we don't speak perfectly, we shouldn't speak at all. And that belief, that's the real thing stopping you.
And this fear of imperfection isn't just in language learning. It happens in everything. Imagine you're learning to play the guitar. You pick it up for the first time, strum a few notes, and oops, it sounds terrible. What do? Do you throw the guitar away and say, I'm never playing again? No, you keep practicing. You improve little by little, and over time, those mistakes disappear. Learning English works the exact same way. If you're making mistakes, it means you're learning. It means you're improving. The only way to truly fail is to stay silent and never try.
Yes, and here's something even more important. You don't need to fix all your mistakes before you start speaking. You just need to communicate. You don't need to sound like a native speaker. You don't need to say every word perfectly. You just need to get your ideas across. And once you start doing that, the confidence will follow. But confidence doesn't magically appear. It comes from action. The more you speak, the more confident you'll feel.
So let's break it down. If you want to be fluent, you have to change your mindset. Stop thinking, I need to study more before I start speaking. I have to be perfect. People will judge me. Instead, start thinking, I'll improve by speaking, not by waiting. Mistakes help me learn. Fluency comes from practice, not from perfection.
And guess what? You don't even have to wait until tomorrow to start. You can start right now. I want you to do something for me. Wherever you are, say one sentence in English out loud. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just say something. Anything. Describe the room you're in. Say how you feel right now. Just open your mouth and speak.
Seriously, right now. Don't just think about it. Actually do it. Say it out loud. I'll wait.
See? You just spoke English. And that's the first step. It doesn't matter if it was a simple sentence. It doesn't matter if you made mistakes. The only thing that matters, you took action. And if you can do that right now, you can do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. And before you know it, you'll be speaking English naturally without even thinking about it. All right, we've talked about the mindset shift. Now let's get practical. You don't just want to understand English. You want to speak it naturally and confidently. But the problem? Most learners don't know where to start or how to practice speaking, especially if they don't have a conversation partner. But here's the secret. You don't need a partner to start speaking today. You can train yourself to think, respond, and speak in English with some powerful, proven techniques. And trust me, if you apply even one of these, you'll see a huge difference in your fluency.
Exactly. So let's dive into the fastest ways to start speaking, even if you feel shy or nervous. First, let's talk about thinking in English instead of translating. This is a game changer. One of the biggest reasons learners hesitate when speaking is because they're trying to translate every word from their native language into English before they say it. But that slows you down. By the time you've figured out how to say something, the conversation has already moved on.
So instead of translating, you need to start thinking in English directly. And don't worry, this isn't as hard as it sounds. Start small. Just describe what's around you in English, in your head. If you see a red car, think, that's a red car. If you're making coffee, think, this coffee smells amazing. When you train your brain to process English automatically, words will come out faster and smoother when you actually speak.
Exactly. And here's another technique that works wonders. Talk to yourself out loud. I know, it sounds weird, but trust me, this builds confidence fast. Throughout your day, just start narrating what you're doing. Instead of just thinking, I'm making coffee, say it out loud. Now I am making coffee. It smells really good. Before bed, reflect on your day out loud. Today was a good day. I studied English and learned some new words.
Yes, and you don't need an audience. Just talk to yourself, like you're having a conversation. It helps your brain get comfortable forming sentences out loud. The more you do this, the less scary it feels to actually speak with other people.
And speaking of building fluency, here's another technique that's used by language learners all over the world: shadowing. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, shadowing is when you listen to a native English speaker and repeat what they say immediately, copying their pronunciation, rhythm, and tone. You can do this with podcasts, YouTube videos, movies, anything spoken in English. Just pick a sentence, pause, and repeat it exactly how they said it. It's like mimicking their voice.
And this technique is powerful because it trains your brain and mouth to form English sounds naturally. Plus, it boosts your pronunciation and speaking speed. If you do this for just 5 minutes a day, you'll start to sound more fluent without even thinking about it.
Now, here's another trick that works wonders. Ask and answer your own questions. It's like having a mini conversation with yourself. And before you think, that's weird, let me explain why it works. The reason many learners struggle to speak is that they don't train themselves to think and respond quickly in English. So by asking and answering questions, you create that practice for yourself.
For example, in the morning, ask yourself, "What are my plans for today?" Then answer, "Today, I will study English, go for a walk, and cook dinner." Or at night, ask, "What did I do today?" Answer, "I went to work, had lunch with a friend, and watched a movie." This simple habit forces you to form complete sentences on the spot, just like in a real conversation.
Yes. And if you want to take it to the next level, record yourself speaking. This is one of the most powerful ways to track your progress. Open your phone, hit record, and talk about anything: your day, your hobbies, what you learned. Then listen to it. At first, you might cringe at your voice, but over time, you'll notice yourself improving. You'll hear where you get stuck and what you need to work on.
And the best part? After a few weeks, when you go back and listen to an old recording, you'll see how much progress you've made. That's one of the best motivators to keep going.
So let's quickly summarize these 5 powerful techniques to start speaking English today. 1. Think in English. Stop translating. Describe things in English naturally. 2. Talk to yourself out loud. Narrate your day, even if no one is listening. 3. Use the shadowing technique. Copy native speakers to improve fluency. 4. Ask and answer your own questions. Train your brain to think and respond quickly. 5. Record yourself speaking. Track your progress and gain confidence.
These are simple but highly effective techniques. You don't need a language partner. You don't need a classroom. You just need to start speaking today.
All right. We've talked about how to practice speaking on your own, but let's be real. Conversation is a two-way street. And at some point, you're going to want to practice with real people. But what if you don't have an English-speaking friend, or you don't live in an English-speaking country? Does that mean you're stuck?
Not at all. The truth is, there are more opportunities to speak English today than ever before. You just need to know where to look. And the best part? You don't even have to leave your house to start practicing. Let's break down the best ways to find speaking opportunities, no matter where you are.
First, language exchange apps. If you don't have English-speaking friends, you can make some. Apps like Tandem, HelloTalk, and Speaky connect you with real people who want to practice languages. You can chat with native English speakers who are learning your language, so it's a win-win. And guess what? Many people on these apps want to help, so don't be afraid to start a conversation.
Yes, and here's another way. Join online communities. There are so many Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, and Discord servers where English learners practice together. Some of these groups even organize Zoom calls or live discussions where you can actually speak with other learners in real time.
That's right. And if you feel nervous about joining live calls, here's a great low-pressure way to start. Send voice messages instead of texting. Instead of typing, "Hello, how are you?" in a chat, record yourself saying it and send the voice note. It's a small step, but it gets you comfortable with speaking out loud.
I love that. And here's another tip. Find a speaking buddy. Maybe you have a friend or classmate who's also learning English. Set up regular practice calls. It doesn't have to be long. Even 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference. Just call each other and talk about your day. Practice common phrases, or even role-play conversations.
Yes, and if you're lucky enough to live in a place where tourists or expats visit, talk to them in English. Even small interactions, like ordering food in English, asking for directions, or making small talk, help you build real-world speaking experience.
Such a great tip. And if you're in school or university, check if there's an English club or conversation group. Many communities have meetups where people gather just to practice speaking English. It's a great way to meet new people and improve at the same time.
So let's recap the 6 easiest ways to find speaking opportunities. 1. Use language exchange apps like Tandem or HelloTalk. 2. Join online communities on Facebook, WhatsApp, or Discord. 3. Send voice messages instead of texting. Find a speaking buddy and set up regular calls. 5. Talk to English-speaking tourists or locals whenever possible. 6. Join an English club or conversation group in your area.
If you try even one of these, you'll start speaking more often. And the more you speak, the more fluent you'll become. All right, let's get real for a moment. Learning a language, especially speaking English fluently, isn't always easy. Some days, you feel like you're making great progress. Words come out smoothly, and you feel confident. But then, there are other days when you feel stuck, when you feel like you're not improving, when you start doubting yourself. And if you've ever felt like that, let me tell you something. You are not alone. Every single person who has learned a new language has gone through this. Even native speakers had to go through this as babies. The key is knowing how to push through those tough moments and stay motivated. And that's exactly what we're going to help you with right now.
Yes, because motivation isn't something that just magically appears. You have to create it. And one of the most important things to remember is this: mistakes are part of learning. If you're making mistakes, it means you're actually trying. It means you're stepping outside your comfort zone, which is where real progress happens. But a lot of learners get scared when they make mistakes. They think, "Oh no, I sounded silly," or "What if people laugh at me?" But let me ask you this. Have you ever laughed at someone who was trying to speak your language? Probably not, right? You were probably impressed that they were even trying. It's the same with English. People don't judge you for trying. In fact, most will respect you for it. So instead of fearing mistakes, embrace them. Every mistake is proof that you're learning something new.
That's such an important point. And here's another thing. If you ever feel stuck, trust that progress is happening even when you don't see it. Think about this. When kids are growing, you don't see them getting taller every day, right? But after a few months, you suddenly realize they've grown so much. Learning English works the same way. Just because you don't feel progress doesn't mean it's not happening. Your brain is absorbing everything in the background, connecting patterns, and improving, even when you don't realize it. The key is to keep going, even when it feels slow. Because one day, you'll look back and say, "Wow, I'm so much better than I was before."
And speaking of looking back, one of the best ways to see your progress is to record yourself. Seriously, this is one of the most powerful tools you can use. A lot of learners think, "Oh no, I hate the sound of my own voice." But listen, this isn't about sounding perfect. This is about tracking your growth. Here's what I want you to do. Record yourself speaking in English today. Just talk for a minute about your day, your hobbies, or even what you learned in this episode, then forget about it. Don't listen to it right away. Wait a month. Keep practicing. Then after a month, go back and listen to that recording. I promise you, you will be shocked at how much you've improved.
Yes, and when you hear that improvement, celebrate it. That's another key to staying motivated. Celebrate small wins. A lot of learners focus too much on what they can't do yet. They think, I'm still not fluent. I still struggle with pronunciation. But instead of focusing on what's missing, focus on how far you've come. Maybe today, you spoke for 3 minutes without stopping. That's progress. Maybe last week, you finally had your first conversation in English. That's a win. Maybe you just learned 5 new words today. That's amazing. Every small step counts. And when you celebrate those little victories, you stay motivated to keep going.
Absolutely. And finally, the most important thing, make learning fun. Let's be real. If learning English feels like a boring, never-ending chore, you're not going to stay motivated. So change the way you practice. Watch movies in English, listen to music, read books that actually interest you, talk about topics you love. If you're passionate about sports, learn English by watching sports interviews. If you love cooking, watch English recipe videos. When you enjoy the process, fluency happens naturally.
All right, we've covered a lot today. We've talked about why English learners stay silent, the mindset shift you need, powerful techniques to start speaking, and how to stay motivated. But now, it's time for the most important step: taking action. Because no matter how much you learn, the only way to get better at speaking is to actually speak. And we're not going to let you leave this episode without a challenge to push you forward.
That's right. Here's what I want you to do. Record yourself speaking for 1 minute. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be long. Just pick a simple topic. Talk about your day, your hobbies, or something you learned today. Open your phone, hit the record button, and just speak.
And here's the secret. You don't have to show it to anyone. This is for you. Just to prove to yourself that you can do it. And if you keep doing this every week, you'll see how much you're improving.
And if this episode helped you, let us know. Hit like, subscribe, and comment your biggest takeaway. What's one thing you're going to try today to start speaking more? Tell us below.